Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. No, the legislature isn't in session today, but we're broadcasting from the legislature. Scott Craigie has the rundown.
Well, we're going to have the Chief Executive Officer, President, and Chairman of the Board of Sierra Pacific Resources, a statewide utility, talking about $336 million that some courts say Nevada homeowners owe.
And also on the Power Pundit panel today, Derek Morse, Paul Enos, and Bilyeu. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communications, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
Something spectacular has taken wing not far from Reno or Lake Tahoe, and never far from your mind. An escape of fine dining and legendary golf. Introducing the resort at Red Hawk. And at the center of it all, we've feathered our nest with new villas that have elevated Red Hawk to the status of a premier resort. The resort at Red Hawk, a beautiful new arrival in northern Nevada.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? They do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
Do not be afraid, even though we were doing this interview at the legislature, we were actually taping it on the 7th, and so playing it back on the 9th and for the following week. And so Scott Craigie and I are here with Walt Higgins, who is the Chairman and CEO of Sierra Pacific Resources. Pleasure to have you here, and on what has been the special session here at the legislature. But that's not what we have you here for. We have you to talk about energy issues. Let's start out with Enron, and the fact that FERC has come up with $1.5 million email messages that they have been going through. Have you gleaned any more information from these email messages that will help your cause?
To date, we have not been granted access to the many voice, email, taped conversations that are in the possession of the FERC, but under seal from the United States Department of Justice, because they're a material part of the criminal investigations that Justice is carrying out. And we have sought and been granted the right to see and hear all of that information, but Justice has asked the bankruptcy court to hold off on opening that up because they're still prosecuting some of the criminals from Enron. And as a result, the trial that the bankruptcy court was intending to hold has been successively delayed a few times. In the meantime, the FERC continues its process toward looking into Enron's violations of its market-based rate authority and its tariffs. which will result in a trial in September. So these two paths are going along in parallel, and we have been told by the bankruptcy judge we will get to hear and look at all the tapes and all the conversations and know all the things that Enron was up to, which are very material to the whole situation about why Nevada ought not to have to pay for this. So we don't know which one's going to happen first. We're hopeful that an amendment to the Senate energy bill that will now hopefully go to the conference committee and be worked out with the House in the United States Congress, which says that the FERC has jurisdiction over this matter. We hope that prevails and remains in the bill, and that will put before the technically competent authority the about whether or not Enron was in violation of its tariffs and in violation of its duties and the laws of the United States in doing what it did.
And at this point, bottom line, where do you think you are in terms of being able to not have to pay that $300 million to Enron?
Almost every day there's some new revelation about what Enron was up to, and each and every successive revelation has moved the needle farther away from having to pay, from a judgment at one time that we had to pay to the judgment being overturned by the United States District Court, to the FERC really getting into this and looking at it, and then finding that Enron was in violation of its license, to finding that the kind of thing Enron's trying to collect from us would be an example of an unjust profit, to declaring that there should be a trial. Each one of these things moves us farther away from the prospect of having to pay this, we think, ill-gotten gain to Enron.
There's more than just Enron involved. Obviously, everybody who's watching here, every household practically is, has some piece of that $300 million, $350 million that they might end up having to pay if we don't find our way through this. The Colorado River Commission, which is a state entity, a state agency entity in southern Nevada, has been found, or at least named by the Attorney General in the state of California as a co-conspirator in this effort. To what extent does the CRC, a state agency, have culpability here, and what needs to be done to at least find a way so that kind of pattern of behavior doesn't show itself again in the future?
We were very surprised when the California Attorney General did what he did, because our dispute with the Colorado River Commission was settled. We're at peace with what was going on. We believe that they are attempting in every way to operate the way they ought to operate. We have a very healthy partnership with the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and I really don't know any of the details of what the California Attorney General did, but I'm comfortable that the Colorado River Commission, under its board's leadership and the governor's leadership and the management there, is doing what it's supposed to be doing for Nevadans.
If I can shift to another entity that is in this and get your reaction, the bankruptcy judge that's overseeing the Enron bankruptcy has said, in general terms at least as quoted in the media, I haven't seen any transcripts from anybody, where he has said, yes, it really is an unfair thing that's happened to the state of Nevada. At the same time, the Enron investors need some money back for the investments that they had made in Enron. Now, if they don't have a legal right to that money, I mean, is there something that we're doing to fight to make sure that Nevada homeowners aren't unnecessarily paying investors just because they got hurt? And they did get hurt.
We need to put that in some context, Scott. To start with, there's two reasons why we're fighting this battle. One is we're fighting on behalf of our customers because we don't want to be in a position where we have to ask our customers to put any money on the table to pay for what we consider misdeeds and criminal actions on the part of Enron. It also protects the company from it landing in the shareholders' lap. But at the end of the day, the most important thing here is to remember that we're not talking about Enron shareholders anymore. They've lost everything thanks to Enron's criminal actions. We're talking about the banks that financed Enron. And in many cases, we think those banks were complicit in the schemes that were undertaken by Enron. And we've sued the banks, too. We have an outstanding...
You've sued the banks?
We have sued the banks.
Which banks have you sued?
Well, there's a list of many of the major investment and commercial banks that were Enron's lenders. We sued them about 6 6 or 8 months ago. That suit is pending in federal court. It is in a discovery process right now. The Enron case is so complex that there's a master discovery process that's undertaken. And that lawsuit is a claim by us that the banks knowingly aided Enron in many of its fraudulent activities, which allowed it to cover up its true financial condition, blow up its profits, or make them look bigger than they were. And there are other cases like this that you've seen and heard about. There was a big barge financing criminal case where several Merrill Lynch executives, and Merrill is not one of the companies we've sued, by the way, were tried, along with some Enron people, for the so-called Nigerian barge deal, which was all a scam to raise Enron's apparent earnings so that their creditworthiness would look better, because Enron had to be creditworthy in order to trade in the power markets.
What kind of money would you anticipate getting if you win the lawsuit?
We really have not said what the damages are. We're interested in all the things that Enron did and was enabled by the banks that helped them that caused the power markets to be manipulated and dysfunctional. Because if you kind of follow the chain here, if Enron hadn't been allowed to remain in the market because its true financial condition had been known, there's a very good chance the market could not have been manipulated the way it was. It took somebody that was dominating the market like Enron to be able to manipulate. So we believe that in addition to fighting Enron's claims against us, we needed to go after those who helped Enron do what they were doing. You can't sue Enron in the regular U.S. courts. You can only sue a bankrupt entity in a bankruptcy court. So we're suing the bankers that aided and abetted Enron's crimes in the United States court system in order to, number one, make sure this never happens again, but make sure Nevada doesn't have to pay.
Okay, we have to take a break here. We'll be right back with more with Walt Higgins right after this. Wow.
For a videotape copy of any Nevada Newsmakers program, call 775-857-2244. The tapes are $20 each, including shipping.
My family started this business 27 years ago.
We work hard to serve our customers and our community. But it's getting harder and harder to keep the doors open.
For example, our workers' comp is going through the roof. Isn't anyone on my side anymore?
The Retail Association of Nevada is. If you're a small business owner, we can cut your workers' comp by up to 50%, lobby for your interests, and keep you informed. Put us to work today.
Many of the materials we rely on every day come from the ground, and modern mining technology brings them to us cleaner and safer than ever before. To learn more about America's natural resources, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
South Reno's hotspot for food, fun, and friends is the Tamarack Junction. Enjoy great food 24 hours a day in the Dining Car Restaurant. For a quick bite and the best sandwiches in town, it's the Whistle Stop Deli. And for the best appetizers and menu selections and a large variety of cocktails, beers, and martinis, it's Sully's Sports Bar, Grill, and Nightclub. The Tamarack Junction is your junction for fun. South Virginia and Monty Ranch Parkway.
Your best value in sight is here for you to see. From frames to lenses to eye exams, you're covered A to Z. Davis Optical, your best value in sight.
Davis Optical Centers with 2 locations in Reno and Sparks.
Davis Optical, your best value in sight.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers with Walt Higgins, and he is the CEO and Chairman of Sierra Pacific Resources. October 1st, Nevada power electric bills are going to go up because of the cost of natural gas. It's not a huge amount, from what I understand. It's about $5 a month. But we're seeing a dramatic increase in the need for natural gas around the world. How do you see this affecting us in the Silver State here in the United States in general?
One of my great worries right now is the vast overdependence that the United States has on natural gas. It's a wonderful product. We're a gas utility in northern Nevada, but probably not as well known is Nevada's electric system is heavily dependent on natural gas, whether it's the power that we generate, which is partly coal, but more natural gas than coal, or the power that we buy, which is really dominated in its price by natural gas. That's great in terms of the environment. Natural gas is the environmental fuel of choice. But in terms of the risk that it puts the entire United States, but especially a state like Nevada that's as heavily dependent on natural gas for electricity and gas fuel, that's not a good place to be. We need more diverse fuel sources and power sources. We need more renewables in the state, and the legislature's worked on that. We need more coal as a part, clean coal, environmentally acceptable coal, as a part of our power mix, so that no one fuel, no one power source, if it has a problem, whether it's a price problem or a reliability problem, can cause the power system to be in trouble cost-wise or reliability.
Now, there was a major bill that was put through the legislature. Randolph Townsend worked on it, Senator Townsend. You all were in it. And it went to renewables. Tell us just briefly what the scope of that is and what the focus is that goes right to cutting these costs.
Nevada is lucky that it has an abundance of three very important renewable resources. It's got a lot of sun. We have geothermal, which is very unusual. It dominates in the north. And we have a lot of wind. The problem is capturing it, getting it to the customers, and blending it in as a part of our system. We're very committed to doing that, and it is the policy of the state of Nevada that we should do it. Last session, 2 years ago, the legislature said, we want more renewables. We've been working very hard to put more renewables into the mix. It's not been easy. Our financial condition has made it hard, and renewable developers have had some trouble getting their financing, getting the plants built, and so forth. That's working better now, but we're still not as good as we'd like to be on making the goals. The goal was that by 2013, 15% of our entire power portfolio should come from renewable resources. And of that, a small part, because of the cost and difficulty, should be dedicated to solar resources. This time, the legislature obviously had to deal with the fact that we were having trouble getting as much renewables on as we and the state would like, but they also had to recognize that maybe there were other ways to try to meet these very worthy goals. So they adopted or endorsed a program that helps with the financing. That's a part of a bill that has yet to pass, but we hope will. And they have adopted, if the bill passes, an increase in the amount of renewables and conservation. In other words, either use it from a renewable resource or use less of it. Either one ought to count to meeting this very worthy state goal. So the legislature has said you have 2 more years to meet the goal, but the goal is raised by 5%, but you can count conservation, actual energy saved, if it's a utility-sponsored program, for up to 25% of that goal. Those are both very wise things to do as a matter of public policy. We congratulate the legislature. I just hope they pass it.
Walt, I thank you for being here. We're out of time. There are 2 things I want to raise for your next visit, so I'm booking you right now here, because I want to talk to you about cleaner coal. There's a company called Tampa Electric that has done outstanding things with clean coal burning plants, and also nuclear power, not for the Silver State, but for the nation. So next time you come back, we'll talk to you. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Since its creation more than a decade ago, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has focused on 3 goals: preserving water quality, improving water conservation in Southern Nevada, and meeting the community's current and future water needs. Through thoughtful planning, responsible management, and collaboration, it's succeeding. As we move into the 21st century, the authority continues to embrace sustainable water development and efficient water use. That's our promise to Nevada.
Something spectacular has taken wing not far from Reno or Lake Tahoe, and never far from your mind. An escape of fine dining and legendary golf. Introducing the resort at Red Hawk. And at the center of it all, we've feathered our nest with new villas that have elevated Red Hawk to the status of a premier resort. The Resort at Red Hawk, a beautiful new arrival in northern Nevada.
So, who do you use for workers' comp?
Pro Group Management.
Ah, I've heard some good things about them.
You bet. Employee background checks, safety training, seminars. Oh, and here's the great part. If you have an issue, they work for you, not against you.
Sounds perfect. And expensive.
Well, that's the best part. They saved me 30%. I've heard they've saved others 50%.
Works for me. Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by employer links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
You are watching Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, just want to follow up with one thing. Randy Thompson joins me here on the Pundit panel. From the Walt Higgins interview, he mentioned that Sierra Pacific Resources were going to be suing a whole bunch of banks. Here's a list of those banks, and they include Citigroup, Salomon Smith Barney, J.P. Morgan, Barclays Bank, and Credit Suisse. So some pretty high-profile banks there. Let's introduce our Pundit panel for today. Bill Bilyeu is here, and Paul Enos is here with the Retail Association of Nevada, one of our proud sponsors, and Derek Morse with RTC, and he was lobbying for RTC down at the legislature.
Well, he's not very happy. I don't want you. Well, actually, RTC, but not as much. But your concern is with the eminent domain issues that came up.
Well, the session is just too complex to say it was good or bad. But the areas that we deal in, one that we were actually disappointed in was the legislation that was passed that impacts eminent domain. That's a tool that we must use as a community in order to get property for things like new roads and this type of thing. And the whole principle is simple. If you have to come in as a public and take someone's property, they should be fairly compensated. I don't think anyone argues with that, but there was some legislation that was passed this time that really does tilt so much in favor of the individual property owner against the public interest. By our calculations, the taxpayers in Washoe County are going to end up spending about $70 million more in the next 25 years for property because of this legislation, and that's just not right. It should be fair, but it shouldn't be tilted.
But Derek, it's not fair, and that's why you had it's not fair, and that's why the legislature had to address it. Terry Kerr, I think, had one of the best bills this session, SB 326, which said you can't take somebody's land and say it's just going to be for open space. That's absolutely correct.
The open space issues are something quite different from transportation, but I'm looking at transportation. We all agree the eminent domain is a proper exercise for these types of things.
One of the worst things the government can do is take your life, take your liberty, or take your property. And when a government takes a property and they are not fairly compensating somebody for it, it has to be addressed.
If
I am
they're
thankful.
not fairly compensated, but the law is
we look at like
clearly,
Ballardini Ranch at Washoe County. That has not happened. There are many cases where people are not being fairly compensated for their property.
And in those cases where they are not, let's fix that problem, but let's not destroy the public's interest and make them pay money, most of which is going to trial attorneys' pockets, by the way.
What's wrong with that?
Well,
says the trial attorney.
but again, let's be fair about this, and I think, again, they went in and they did some things that were not fair.
Yeah, but maybe if government were a little bit fairer, then maybe the trial attorneys wouldn't make so much money, because I've done did a lot of condemnation cases in Elko when they did the railroad relocation. Invariably, the government came in, project, it's only going to cost us this much. Guess what?
They underestimated just about everything. They offered pittances to the property owners who were affected, many who have lived there all their lives.
Then deal with that. But
well, we don't.
Well, and that's why you're having legislation to deal with it, because you guys aren't doing what's fair and equitable.
If you look at the number of our cases, for instance, with the RTC that actually go to trial, it's a tiny thing because we do it responsibly. We have federal regulations.
How about urban renewal? How about urban renewal?
Then deal with urban renewal.
Do you like condemnation for that?
I think
we don't like the character of the neighborhood, we're going to condemn the property.
In some cases, if it's finely tailored, and I think they did some responsible things in trying to look at the criteria for urban renewal. I don't have any argument with that. But when they blanket, per se, allow people to come in and testify as to value of property, for instance, there's a bill that now allows this, without being a certified appraiser. They come into court, the jury says, I heard this person says $12 million, a certified appraiser says it's worth $1 million. Let's split the baby. The public pays that money and they shouldn't. Those are things that don't get built now that the public needs.
It's funny, everybody cries and whines. Everybody will cry and whine about it until it's your property that the government's taking, and it's the pins that they offer you.
I have had property taken by the government that I owned in Oregon. I understand the process. If there is an agency that is rogue, that is going about it the wrong way out there, then deal with that agency. There are sanctions, but let's not get
and you deal with them in the legislature, especially when it's Washoe County.
One at a time, guys, one at a time.
There are no sanctions.
There are sanctions in that regard.
What? Name one.
I'll tell you.
What law, what statute, what regulation?
First of all, the governor or the executive of whoever runs that agency can deal with sanctions if they have people that are going outside the boundaries and are consistently lowballing their offers and treating people poorly. There are all sorts of regulations.
How do we,
government will step in if we have
spoken like a true Democrat. I mean, I sit there and I read the newspaper every day where we have abuses by government and people involved in government, and there seem to be no sanctions at all. We have a university system up here, for God's sake, where they're abusing animals. They can't keep track of them. What has happened? Nothing.
I was in a hearing this session,
and guess what? Guess what? To finally get redress for the wrongs that were committed to him, the poor gentleman involved has to go see a trial attorney.
We have so many laws on the books. We have so many, and people don't enforce them. What do? They pass another one that just leaves for more ground for litigation and confusion. Let's deal with the perpetrators.
They try to make you guys do what is correct and proper.
Let's repeal the condemnation laws then. Good place to start.
Gentlemen, a fine discussion. I appreciate you being here, Randy, and I had some coffee during the whole thing.
Yeah, we've solved all the world problems.
We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after that. Great job, guys.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
Here at the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, water resources come from fresh, clean groundwater, approved by state permits. The water is pumped from wells to million-gallon storage tanks and then distributed to TRI companies. Another amenity is our investment in a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant. This disposal system converts waste to clean water for industrial applications. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevada.
My family started this business 27 years ago.
We work hard to serve our customers and our community.
But it's getting harder and harder to keep the doors open.
For example, our workers' comp is going through the roof. Isn't anyone on my side anymore?
The Retail Association of Nevada is. If you're a small business owner, we can cut your workers' comp by up to 50%, lobby for your interests, and keep you informed. Put us to work today.
Once again, thanks to all of our crew, both here at the station and down at the legislature, for doing a great job for coming to you from the legislature for the last 6 weeks. And we'll have more great shows for you coming up next week as we continue to cover politics, business, and education right here on Nevada Newsmakers. Thanks for watching.